Hi everybody, welcome back to Goodnight Lighthouse. I'm Miss Dorothy and I'm here to read you another story. And I've got a fun book tonight about a principal at school. Do you go to school? Do you have a principal? Somebody who's in charge? Miss Dorothy's the principal of her school. But this principal has something that Miss Dorothy doesn't have. He wears a tie to school. Every day he puts on his tie and he has very special ties. And this book is called Mr. Tanen's Ties. Mr. Tanen's Ties. That's Mr. Tanen. He's the principal of the school, and he wears special ties all the time. But something happens, and he can't wear his ties anymore, and he gets a little sad. And we need to get into this book and see if they can figure out how to make Mr. Tanen happy again. Are you ready to get inside this book with Miss Dorothy? Good. I need you to sit up and listen up, because here we go.
Mr. Tanen's Ties, written by Maryann Cocca-Leffler. Mr. Tanen is the principal of the Lynnhurst Elementary School. All the children love him, and they also love his ties. Every morning as the children enter the school, they check out Mr. Tanen's ties. It's a good way to start the day. Mr. Tanen has quite a tie collection. Funny ties, crazy ties, holiday ties, ties that play music, and even ties that light up. He also has a big collection of tourist ties. Anytime students go on a trip, they bring home ties for Mr. Tanen. His office closet bulges with ties. Wow, he does have very colorful ties, and the kids at school really like it. He changes his ties several times a day, depending on his mood, the weather, or what's for lunch in the cafeteria. On Frankfurter Friday, he always puts on his hot dog tie. No one will know if I get mustard on it, he says. If the weather suddenly changes, so does his tie. If he is wearing his umbrella tie, you know that it's raining even before you look outside. As for official duties, he always wears his red, white, and blue tie with yellow stars. He knows exactly what tie to wear and when. One day, Mr. Tanen had an important meeting with Mr. Apple at the school department. Everyone in town called Mr. Apple Mr. Crab Apple because he was always grouchy and never smiled. Of course, Mr. Tanen wore the appropriate tie. Mr. Tanen, Mr. Apple began, you are a fine principal, but there is one thing that concerns me. What's that, Mr. Apple? Asked Mr. Tanen. Education is serious business, said Mr. Apple. Absolutely, agreed Mr. Tanen. You are a role model for your students, said Mr. Apple. Mr. Tanen nodded. Therefore, you should look proper at all times. Mr. Apple pointed to Mr. Tanen's tie. And that's not proper. He handed Mr. Tanen a plain blue tie. This is. From now on, Mr. Tanen, keep your silly ties in your closet. You are to wear only blue ties. Mr. Tanen was shocked. No sports ties with soccer balls? No. No tourist ties with palm trees and pink flamingos? No, Mr. Tanen. No light-up trees at Christmas? No, Mr. Tanen. Blue ties. Just blue. Oh no, he's trying to take away all his special ties. The next day, Mr. Tanen greeted the children as usual, but something was not right. Mr. Tanen, your tie, it's just plain blue, said Alex. Mr. Tanen felt just plain blue. He sighed. Sorry, kids, it's proper blue from now on. Strict orders from Mr. Apple. Boring, said Carlo. How are we going to know the weather? Asked Olivia. Or what we're having for lunch, said Kaylee. Mr. Tanen shrugged sadly. This is so sad. Mr. Tanen didn't feel like talking to anyone all morning. At lunch, he wished he had on his hot dog tie. Look, he spilled mustard on his blue tie. When the second grade celebrated Kristen's birthday, he couldn't wear his special tie that played Happy Birthday to You. Alex was worried. Mr. Tanen is not the same, he thought. They can tell that Mr. Tanen's just not happy anymore. Early Monday morning, the school secretary phoned Mr. Apple. Sir, Mr. Tanen just called in sick. He will be out all week with the blues. You will have to come to the Lynnhurst School to fill in as principal." The children were surprised to see Mr. Apple greet them at the door. "I will be your principal for the week," he snapped. "Let's have straight lines, no talking, no running." "I miss Mr. Tanen already," whispered Alex. Mr. Apple's not a very fun principal. That afternoon, Mr. Apple even made recess rules. "No playing on the wet grass," he yelled. "You'll track mud into school." Recess was no fun. The kids were happy when the bell rang. As they were filing in, they saw Mr. Apple climbing a tree. "What's he doing up there, spying on us?" asked Kaylee. "I can't believe it. He's bird watching," said Olivia. "He actually looks happy," said Carlo. That gave Alex an idea. They found out something that Mr. Apple likes. On Tuesday, Alex gave Mr. Apple a tie with birds on it. "Well, thank you, Alex, but that's not quite my style." When he was alone, Mr. Apple stared at the tie. "Cardinals are my favorite bird," he thought. He held the tie up to his plain gray suit. He couldn't help but to try it on. After school, Mr. Apple wore his new tie to the grocery store. "Hello, Mr. Apple," said the cashier, Miss Sweet. "Good day," mumbled Mr. Apple. "Lovely tie," commented Miss Sweet. "You must like birds. I'm crazy about cats." Mr. Apple smiled, just a little. On Wednesday, Mr. Apple picked up his mail. Then he sat at Mr. Tanen's desk to work. But today he couldn't concentrate. He opened Mr. Tanen's closet and searched through the ties. He found just what he was looking for. In the afternoon, he went to the grocery store again. He got in Miss Sweet's checkout line. "Mr. Apple, now that's a charming tie." Mr. Apple and Miss Sweet chatted for a long time. I think he likes Miss Sweet. On Thursday after school, Mr. Apple thumbed through Mr. Tanen's ties again. This time he heard music. It was coming from a tie. Mr. Apple headed to the grocery store. When he got to the register, he pressed the tie. It played, "Let me call you sweetheart." "Mr. Apple, I never knew you could be so delightful," said Miss Sweet. Mr. Apple handed Miss Sweet a rose. Will you have dinner with me tonight?" "I would love to, Mr. Apple," said Miss Sweet. On Friday evening, Mr. Apple greeted the children wearing a tie with red hearts. "Isn't that Mr. Tanen's Valentine tie?" asked Alex. Mr. Apple grinned. "Well, I don't think he'd mind if I borrowed it, do you?" "Oh, he wouldn't mind," shouted all the kids. On Monday, Mr. Tanen came back to school. Mr. Apple was waiting at the door. "That tie, Mr. Tanen," grumbled Mr. Apple. "Sorry, sir. I got a stain on it, mustard," apologized Mr. Tanen. "Well, it's a good thing I brought you another one," said Mr. Apple, and he handed Mr. Tanen a box. Mr. Tanen sighed. He opened the lid. He figured it would just be another boring blue tie. A big smile spread across his face. "It's just your kind of blue," said Mr. Apple. Then Mr. Apple gave him a shopping bag filled with letters. "The kids have been writing me letters all week. They want their principal back, and so do I." "Thank you, Mr. Apple." "One other thing," said Mr. Apple shyly. Can you lend me this wedding bells tie? I have an important date tonight." And Mr. Apple got married to Miss Sweet in the special wedding bell tie.
Yay! Mr. Tanen gets to wear his ties again. Oh, I'm so glad. I was really sad when Mr. Apple said he couldn't wear his ties. He wanted him to be all professional and wear only silly, straight blue ties. That wasn't him. That wasn't what made him happy. And then Mr. Apple figured out that he could be happy if he wore silly ties too. And now he's gotten married to Miss Sweet, and they're all wearing special ties. This book really made me happy because I was really happy that Mr. Apple figured out that Mr. Tanen was happier with his ties. And the kids were happy. Everybody was happier. And that is the way it should be at school. So this book made me happy. You know what? When you go to school, there's important rules you need to follow, things you need to do, but it can still be a fun, happy place, just like Mr. Tanen made it a fun, happy place. It can be a fun, happy place. You just have to follow the rules, do what you're told, have fun with your friends, and everything will be great at school. When you go to school, you remember that. It's very important to follow the rules, and you'll find out that when you're following the rules, you can still have lots of fun, just like the kids at Mr. Tanen's school. You think about that if you go to school tomorrow. Remember, very important to follow the rules. And what's the best way to follow the rules? I remember, obey, and obey right away. And then come back and see Miss Dorothy, because I'm going to be sitting right here, ready to read another book to you. Bye! Thanks for reading with Miss Dorothy. I hope you enjoyed this book, and I hope you'll come back soon to read another. What's your favorite book? Drop Miss Dorothy a note and let me know. I'll go find it, and I'll read it to you. Be sure to subscribe, like, and share. I'll see you soon.